welcome to Waranara's Yuran. I'm recording from the Gadigal land in the heart of Sydney, Australia. Waranara is a Gadigal name meaning to seek, which sums up the mission of our Health Professions Education Research Network here at the University of Sydney. And Yuran means many voices, which our podcast represents. So I'd like to pay my respects to the elders, past, present and emerging of all the lands on which we're present, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples listening. I'm here with Carol Pizzuti, a medical anthropologist, currently a PhD student at the University of Sydney. Carol is here to talk about a recent paper she published in volume 39 of the Journal for Continuing Education in the Health Professions, optimising multi-source feedback implementation for Australasian physicians, with her colleagues Michael Pooley and Michele Daly. Carol, would you like to tell us a little bit more about your background and the study that led to the publication?
Sure. Hello, everyone. And first of all, I would like to thank Lynn for this opportunity today. Going back to your question, as you said, I gained Masters of Research in Medical Anthropology in Italy, and my final thesis was on obstetric violence. When I moved to Australia, I started working at the Royal Australasian College of Physicians. And at the time, the college was looking for a qualitative researcher to join their research team at the Professional Practice Directorate to conduct an evaluation study on an MSF trial, or multi-source feedback trial.
Okay.
The college was interested in conducting an evaluation of an MSF to explore how this tool can be used for physicians in Australasia. And I need to give you some background to make clear why this happened.
Yes, please do.
At the moment, there are regulatory changes going on in Australasia. The Medical Board of Australia and also the Medical Council of New Zealand are highly recommending a stronger use of continuing professional development activities focused on reviewing performance and measuring outcomes. So given these recent changes and also considering the role of the college in assisting its members meet their CPD requirements, the RACP has been recently very interested in understanding how it can actually help and support its fellows in use such a tool, because the MSF is usually considered a reviewing performance tool.
Thank you. I mean, you talk about multi-source feedback, MSF, but it can mean many different things to different people. There's not a single methodology. Perhaps you want to tell us a little bit more about what this means to you in your study.
Certainly. The term multi-source feedback, or also MSF, or also called 360 sometimes, is usually this term is usually used to refer to colleague feedback only. But in recent times, it is also used to mention patient feedback and also a debrief session. Because in Australasia, it hasn't been used in this way very often, we wanted to make sure to include all the kind of data possible. So our MSF trial included a participant self-assessment, and then a peers or colleague feedback form, a patient form for their feedback as well, and also a debrief session of the participant with a facilitator.
So let's go in a little bit deeper into that, and also into your study methods. So what exactly did you do?
Our evaluation study was based on a sequential mixed method design. And I would like to clarify that during the study, two different processes were going on.
Okay.
Because on one hand, there was the multi-source feedback trial going on. That means that the RACP fellows were conducting a full MSF cycle with an external provider. And at the same time, there was the research team of the RACP conducting this evaluation study on the MSF trial itself.
I see.
And this is important to remember. Just because the evaluation study happened in specific timing points during the MSF trial, and this is the reason why we decided to include a very nice infographic in the paper that shows you when the MSF trial was happening and in which timing points the evaluation study happened, with the surveys and the semi-structured interview.
Okay, so your research methods that was wrapped around the trial was a survey and semi-structured interviews. Do you want to tell me how many participants were involved?
First of all the participants are volunteers, and they were selected through official channels. There were only 40 places available. But at the beginning, we decided to select 43 physicians for different reasons. For instance, we wanted to have a good selection among the different specialties, and we selected them because most of them said that they would be able to seek feedback from at least 15 colleagues, because this was one of the requirements, and also 35 patients.
35, that's really good.
It is. At the end of the study, not everyone was able to complete the full cycle. So 37 completed the data collection, even if 3 of them completed just the colleague feedback, because we learned a lot about this. For instance, that some physicians for some physicians, it's actually very difficult to collect patient feedback.
That's really fascinating, and actually for a qualitative study, that's quite a significant number of participants, given that all the different feedbacks were present. So, without giving too much away, what did you think was particularly novel about your study?
I think our study was quite unique because probably it is the first one in which Australasian physicians have been asked to provide feedback on a multisource feedback tool. The college is very interested in understanding what the insights and the opinions of the physicians are, because we expect the MSF to be run more broadly and widely in the future. And I think it's very important to understand what the needs of our physicians are and what their insights are. The second element that I would define unique is the use of a virtual debrief. So usual debrief sessions are held face-to-face. But because of the geography of Australia and New Zealand, we know that most of our physicians are spread out in the territory. And we also know that our physicians are very busy, so it might be hard for them to make the time and for a debrief session face-to-face. So we gave them the opportunity to choose a phone debrief session or a video conference debrief session. And we were very pleased to understand that most of them said that it was extremely valuable, despite the logistics, and that this kind of debrief didn't actually affect the effectiveness and the value of the session.
And I think this is really important as well, because the data was collected pre-COVID, before we were all so used to Zooming everywhere and doing virtual.
Exactly. I think it was now, in hindsight, it's very interesting to see how it was novel just 1 year ago. And now everyone is very, very used to communicating virtually.
It just shows how adaptable we all are. Given this is the first time in Australia, what kind of benchmarks did you use?
The MSF was supported by an external provider and this provider was UK-based.
Okay.
And I would like to mention this because the RACP provided just a little administrative support, but the whole trial was actually conducted by this external provider. Because this provider is based in UK, we actually used a UK benchmark for our physicians. And this is not the only reason. The other reason is that because apparently we don't have a national benchmark for our physicians when it comes to professional competencies or professional domains of their practice. This is not reported in the paper, but we know that the use of benchmark is considered highly contentious for two main reasons. First of all, it is very difficult to compare different cohorts when, for instance, specialties are different or work settings are different. And some physicians are quite concerned about this because they are worried about potential skewed results. And the second, challenge with the benchmark is that it could be potentially demotivating for physicians because benchmarks of course are numbers, and people could just focus on those numbers, especially when they are not very positive, instead of focusing on the overall feedback in a more holistic way, taking into consideration context and specific conditions.
Yeah, I completely understand. So without going into your findings, I think we'll move on to my final question. Carol, what's next for you? How does this work fit within your PhD?
This is actually linked to what I mentioned before about the regulatory changes in Australasia. As I said, the RACP is extremely interested in understanding how reviewing performance activities for CPD purposes can work well for physicians. And on this hand, they are still working on MSF implementations at the moment to optimize them. On the other hand, there's another type of activity that's called measuring outcome category, and the college, to better understand optimal implementations of this activity, partner up with the Digital Health CRC recently, and together they decided to give me, very thankfully, this opportunity to study how health data or large health data sets, like for instance Medicare data or electronic medical records or electronic health records, could be used to support and inform continuing medical education programs and continuing professional development practices. And here I am with my PhD.
Oh, that sounds absolutely fantastic. I really look forward to hearing more about the outcomes of that work. Maybe we'll get you back at some point for another podcast. So I'd like to thank you, Carol. Carol Pizzuti was here to talk about a recent paper she published in volume 39 for the journal Continuing Education in the Health Professions, Optimizing Multisource Feedback Implementation for Australasian Physicians. And we'll see you all again next time. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.